The countdown. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this fireside chat on this Monday with Hank and my co host today, Brooke. So excited to have you with us today, Brooke.
Hi, how is everybody? I should probably speak grammatically correct in a writing um
Yeah.
live
Yeah.
video. So
How are everyone?
yeah, there we go. Oh no,
Yeah.
I've started something,
Oh.
haven't I?
How is everybody today? Thanks for joining us. I am not in my normal office slash studio. I am 12 hours west of my home, visiting my daughter in Texas. So this is actually my granddaughter Daisy's room, and this is where I'll be for the next couple weeks. So hello from Texas. And because pollen and everything else is different in Texas, my throat is like scratchy and as I try to acclimate. So I'm going to be sipping on some lemonade throughout the
Oh
whole
yeah.
time to try to keep my throat wet. So Abby's still on vacation. She'll be back middle to end of this week, and we're so excited to have her back and hoping that she's having a great time. I have a feeling that we're going to get some great stories out of this vacation. I'm not trying to speak for Abby, but be sure to
Yeah.
when you guys see Abby again, be sure to prompt and prod for some good stories from Abby because family trips are always rife with stories.
Yeah. And I mean, just with what she shared with us, like the tiny bit already, I can only imagine that it's gonna get better from there. So
Right, right. Well, um, this week we're talking about Protagonist, and this is part of our workshop series that we have going on next Monday. I'll be doing a workshop on protagonists that readers can root for, or cling to, or care for. And my initial want was to say uh, protagonists that readers root for. But then as I kind of started writing out some topics, I started realizing that protagonists aren't necessarily, maybe mostly, but not necessarily someone that we just root for to win the whole time. Protagonists can be a little complex.
yeah.
And that's what we're going to talk about today. What makes a protagonist a great uh, addition to your story, and how does your story build around them? We're probably all familiar with the save the cat trope. There's a whole series of books written. It originally began. Blake Crouch, somebody correct me if I got that wrong, wrote a screenwriting guide called Save the Cat, and he talked about how movies are built a certain way, and if you uh, have a main character that the audience doesn't relate to, have them do something heroic early on so that the audience has something to connect with, and so like literally save a cat out of a tree. The premise of Save the Cat is that a protagonist must perform an action early on, such as literally saving a cat from a tree, to make the audience like and root for them, no matter how flawed they are. The concept, popularized by Blake Snyder, sorry, not Blake Crouch, screenwriting book, forms the foundation of a widely used 15 beat story structure. So it kind of depends on building likability with between the
Mhm.
audience and that protagonist, which probably 85% of the time is something that you're trying to do, but sometimes not. Brooke, you are starting on your first women's fiction novel.
Mhm. Yep.
um, do you have one main protagonist? Is it a cast of characters? Like how are you thinking about the kind of the main character of your story, if you will?
Yeah, so actually, I have two protagonists, but one I would
Okay.
say is secondary to the primary. So the
Okay.
protagonist in my book is actually my daughter.
Okay.
So that is how I'm starting it off. But the second protagonist would be the me character or her mom in the story. So there's definitely
Okay.
two. And I have to say, I haven't necessarily started with the save the cat premise or starting with like that kind of thought process. And I have to say, I'm honestly really when you're talking about all of this, I have an immediate book series that comes to mind that
Yeah.
was the complete opposite of this. And I almost think that I got through it. I read the entire series, but I wonder if anybody can guess what the series is just based on right now. But feel necessarily a connection with the main character, but
Okay.
am I freezing again? I think I might be. But
Well, s- I'm not sure if it was my internet or yours, but you kind of glitched out for a second.
but yeah, but it was hard to kind of get through it at some points because you're just like you just don't necessarily connect with it. But
Right.
it was still a hugely popular and successful um series. And the series is the point, but I don't know if anybody can guess what it is. But it was Girl with a Dragon Tattoo. Like it was. Did you read those? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Yes, I do.
It was
Yes, I do.
really hard, and I feel like um eh, that main character was a tough one. She was super complex,
Yeah.
and there's
Yes.
times when you were rooting for her. But I would have to say that that would be an example of the complete opposite of Save the Cat.
Yes. Yes. And actually, in kind of my talking points that I wrote out, the first one, literally that I wrote out, is balancing the likable character with the compelling character. And I think that character, and I can't remember her name, um, Stieg Larsson wrote that series. Is that right?
Yes,
Did I
they're
just
my
pull that?
books. No, you're right.
Okay.
He's oh wait, I have it. It's right here.
Okay.
One of them. Sorry, cord. This is this isn't the first one. It's one of the last ones. But the girl who played with fire.
Oh
Um,
yes.
what is her name? Anybody know?
I'm drawing a blank. I can see her choppy hair and her
Yeah.
tattoos and her kind of cyberpunk aesthetic, if you will.
What
Um
is her name?
oh shoot.
Lisbeth. Yes, Lisbeth.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Yes, Lisbeth. Yep. 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 Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that book is also like Nordic fiction, like Nordic crime noir, and
Hmm.
which is like a whole aesthetic of its own.
Right.
And at some point the genre is affected by how do I say this? It's not necessarily the genre, the the placement of the kind of the whole um cultural milieu that the book comes from, that like books written and published there definitely lean that way.
Hmm.
They tend to be kind of more brutal, and kind of with a nihilistic worldview sometimes,
Hmm.
which that book definitely kind of leans into. Um, but what is it about that character that's a perfect example, that because she's not always likable, she's
Yeah.
not always someone you approve of. She kind of rarely is someone that you approve of her life choices,
Right.
so what makes us want to keep coming back and hearing from her and to see what she's up to and what's going on with her?
Yeah. I honestly, I don't know. Because I even questioned it a couple of times when I was reading this series because I was talking to my sister about it. I was like, I don't even know why I'm reading this. Like, I'm not rooting for her. Like
Yeah.
most of the time. There were a couple of times when she was like off at that plate. I can't remember this. It's been years. Um, or like when she did what she I'm not going to go into specifics because it's horribly graphic to her like keeper or her
Oh, yeah.
chaperone or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I don't know if it was kind of like a train wreck, you can't look away type situation, which that
This is
could.
what it could be. Yeah, and this is what I wrote under my talking point. I said, "Can a protagonist be genuinely unlikable and still carry a story?" For instance, Walter White, from
Mm,
whatever
Breaking
the
Bad.
name of that series, Breaking Bad, thank you.
Hmm.
Amy Dunn, Tony Soprano, Scarlett O'Hara, Humbert. The distinction that matters, we don't need to like them. We need to be unable to look away. So that train wreck aspect, like you said, um, what actually creates that pull.
Hmm.
So for our listeners out there, for our lovely people in the chat, what is your favorite unlikable character, or someone that's more compelling than likable? Give me some examples, and and tell me why, what makes what makes them want what makes them unlookawayable. And I know that's a really awkward phrase that I just coined there, but what makes you want to keep following them even though they might be terrible people?
Well,
Um,
in that same vein, though, it's
mhm,
funny that you mentioned that because over the weekend I was hanging out with a couple writer, like of my friend writers or my friends that are writers, and
yeah,
we were talking about. There's also like, and that's typically they're not protagonists though, so I will add that
mhm,
caveat to it. They're the antagonists, but
yeah,
there's always that aspect of we want to see that redemptive end. Like we want to see that
yes,
redemptive ending. And I think for somebody who's potentially unlikable at the beginning of the book, there might be a component of it that we want to see that redemptive end where you finally do like a person or they finally do get their stuff figured out, whatever it might be. So I almost wonder if that's a perspective too that I haven't thought about until just now.
could be, could be. Um, we have a comment from, please help me pronounce your, is it Ski Jamie? Skill Jamie? I'm I'm not sure. I'm not sorry. Welcome to our live stream. And I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. Please forgive me. But they say that they love Snape, and Alan Rickman played Snape in the Harry Potter movies, and the antagonist in Robin Hood. These are actually kind of opposite sides of the coin, because Snape, is a very complex and complicated
Hmm.
character. In the first couple of books, um, you just you just hate him. He's just an awful human being. And then as the story unfolds, you get to get a glimpse behind what was making him behave the way he did. And you still never really get full resolution on whether he um genuinely cared for Harry, if it was if it was something he was doing out of his love for Harry's mom. um, and you've got all of the layers of things that happen to him with other people that kind of inform that, and you start to feel sorry for Snape, and then in the final end, he becomes this kind of tragic hero in a
Right.
way, and makes you just like, oh wow, that's so great. But he's complicated all the way to the very end. But but Rowling gives you something to hold on to with him, and and gives you some glimpses behind the character. Whereas the Sheriff of Nottingham and this is the Robin Hood movie with Kevin Costner and uh, Morgan Freeman, if I remember right. And he's just like a comic villain, and you just kind of love to hate him. And there's like almost no, but now I'm thinking about it, he has that sister that's the witch that lives in the dungeon. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but even that movie kind of gives you a glimpse behind the character and kind of the tragic story behind it. So yeah, those are both great examples, but yeah, anyway, I feel like I'm rambling.
No, you're
Um,
not.
the the Snape character is a great one though, because there is no one more unliked in that first book or two, because he just seems to be just a snot,
Hmm.
there's just nothing good about him, and then slowly you get glimpses behind that character, and
Yeah.
that's one of those things that it had to be 7 books long, because of you can't make Snape antagonist turn protagonist, is excellent way to put that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, and I also think because at the beginning, Snape almost epitomizes the Slytherin house, which is everything
Mm,
opposite of
yes.
Gryffindor. And he's
Right.
almost used as that illustrative character to show
That
everything,
personification.
yeah, everything anti-Harry or what Harry will become. And
Right.
so it's interesting to see that transformation throughout the entire series and how it really plays out in the end.
Right.
So
Right. Now, you mentioned in the book that you're writing that your protagonist is your daughter. Now, is she physically your daughter, or is she a character based on your daughter? Like, is this memoir, or is this a a fictional telling of you
yeah,
know?
it's definitely more fictional telling. I'm gonna definitely I don't know how to make it more interesting than probably the real world situation is. But yeah, it's based on my daughter. And if I said that it
Gotcha.
was like a memoir, she'd probably kill me. So
Right. Right. Yeah.
mhm.
Um, do you find um, opportunities to embellish situations or character traits, or not that your daughter's not perfect, that's not what I'm saying, but are there opportunities where this situation could be juiced up a little, or
Oh,
like
absolutely. And I also, some of the fun that I'm going to be having with her character is also accentuating some of those character traits that Paige says that she doesn't have.
of
And
course.
having them play a bigger role in the conversation. So that's going to be really fun. She's still not sure about how she feels about the character being based on her, but like, for example, Abby's been on me because when I'm writing, I'm so used to obviously calling my daughter by her name that I
Yeah,
put her name in there a couple times instead of the character name because
and that's where find and replace comes in handy.
right. And so Abby will be like, "Who's Paige? Brooke, who's Paige?" Like, ah, damn it. Yes.
That's hilarious.
I shouldn't say damn
Yeah,
it on here. I apologize. But yeah. But then I also used her middle name as the character's first name. So
love it. Love it. Um okay, so my next talking point, I'm just gonna scroll through here and we'll see if these resonate. Agency. Do they drive the story, or are they being dragged through the story? The single most common note editors and agents give: the protagonist is passive. Things happen to them instead of because of them. A protagonist makes choices, especially hard ones, under pressure with a cost. Passivity is the silent killer of a lead character. Here's a fun test: pick a beloved character and ask, what's the biggest decision they make? If you can't find one fast, that's telling. Um, and the contrast would be Katniss volunteering versus uh, a lead who just reacts for 300 pages.
mhm.
So in your story, um, are there moments where your protagonist is making hard decisions and comes to forks in the road where a decision has to be made one way or the other?
So that's I think the biggest part of the story. And that's actually the biggest, I think, the transformation that the main character goes through.
Yeah.
Because at first, the biggest thing is that her mom dies. And
Yeah.
so she's kind of forced into a situation where she pretty much everything had been ironed out for her. Like her life had this major plan. And then her mom dies. And then she goes through this transformation to where instead of everything happening to her, she's finally in the seat to drive her own life and make those decisions. And then she starts to have to make it's done through her being forced to make those decisions. So
Right.
yeah, that's actually an interesting point because that's like the main theme throughout what I'm writing right now.
Love it. Love it. I'm writing 2 books right now because I'm a glutton for punishment, and one is a literary fiction kind of character study, and the other is an epic fantasy, um, definitely with big characters, but there's most definitely a plot driving through the book. Like there's a big political political machinations that happen, and then factions that that form, that duel it out, on either side of the politics and all this, and there's big epic battles, and all the things that you would expect from a a big fantasy book. But then my other one, the literary fiction, is about a man who is an adult, and he goes home after his parents have died. Um, and he was an only child, so he's kind of left settling his parents' estate, and he's going through things, and he remembers back to a summer that he lived, 1985, where he was 14 years old, not old enough to have a driver's license, but he's also not a kid anymore. He's at that weird
Mhm.
stage where he's, not quite, free, but, kind of still unencumbered because, nothing's happening. And through kind of going through some of his mom's letters and things like that, he starts reconnecting with these memories of this summer where he realizes that his best friend had lived a life of abuse from his father, and his mother had quietly kind of taken him in and g- kind of given him love and nurture the best she could, being that he
Mhm.
was someone else's child, and things that the protagonist never realized because he was a kid and it was his friend, and he just never. But he starts to. So I guess the big turn is at the end of the book. He looks back and sees how big of a change life happened over that summer, but he just wasn't able to see at the time. So it's very much just kind of a quiet character study. So there's not this big plot moment. Um, but at the same time, kind of looking back over the plan of it, there is a change in the character, and there are decision points that happen, but it's all kind of quiet personal reflection that it
Mhm.
happens in. So the two different books that I'm working on at the same time, and very different execution of kind of how these characters grow. So different approaches to protagonist, but still in the end, you hope to have a changed individual at the end of it. Um,
Mhm.
which brings up a good point. Um, Sometimes there's a change arc where the character grows, or something happens and they respond to it, which causes thing. And then you've got flat arcs where the character doesn't necessarily change a whole lot. I'm thinking of like Jack Reacher,
Mhm.
who a series of novels where Jack Reacher goes on adventure after adventure, rescues people, solves some sort of local small town mystery, and then at the end of it, he sticks his toothbrush in his back pocket, and he,
Keeps
hitchhikes to the
going.
next town.
Yeah.
And he's the same guy at the end of the book that he was at the beginning of the book. And you just are fascinated by this school bus of a man who just waltzes into town and starts kicking butt and setting things, to justice. And he just kind of does it,
Yeah.
and we show up book after book to just watch what he does. And
Yeah, because
so
Jack Ryan's very similar, I would say, that
yeah.
character. Sorry, my monstera just touched me. I was like, "What's going on?" But yeah, but those are super interesting. I mean, you could even say, I mean, more of the movie lines, but like Mission Impossible, same thing.
Right.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a very common character profile, I would say. So it's
Especially if you're talking about Mission Impossible, if you the movies, the Tom Cruise's character, I can't think of his name. Um anyway, the main character, he's kind of a superhero. Like he just does wild stuff, and he just always lands on his feet, and a lot of times a character like that is just disgusting, and we won't show up for him more than once because we're like, man, nobody could. Ethan Hunt, thank you, David. Um, but I think one thing that really makes the Mission Impossible movies great is his cast of supporting characters. Uh,
yes.
you they can die. Ethan may not die, but somebody around him will, and that's going to affect how he responds to the world around him. There are big kind of set pieces that are moving and big geopolitical things that are happening, which, it always doesn't always have to be your main protagonist that's up for grabs, I guess, is one way to
Hmm.
look at it.
Well, and
There
like
just
James
have to be
Bond.
some stakes.
Yeah, like James
James
Bond,
Bond, perfect.
same thing, exact
Yeah.
same thing. Like the characters change in and out. Even James Bond, like that. That one I think is pretty interesting, and it'd be neat to see in a book series, Hank, if you could do this. But like even where the protagonist themselves changes, but it's still the
Yeah.
same character, if that makes sense. Like there's
Yeah.
numerous James Bonds that all fit this quote unquote mold, but
Yeah.
they're different people.
And another one that's a fairly good example of that would be the
Hmm.
Bourne
Born
novels.
Identities, yeah.
Um, Robert Ludlum, is is that right? I'm
I
going
can
with
look
it.
it up.
I think it's Robert Ludlum. But those books were written like in the 70s and 80s, and I remember when the Matt Damon movies came out, I went back and grabbed some of those novels because I wanted to see more of this. And you had Jason Bourne running into a phone booth and dialing a rotary dial phone, and I was like, "Oh, this is wild," you know. Um, but yeah, and I think the like Jason Bourne is like a placeholder for a character, and
Hmm.
the different folks kind of move in and out of that name. And I think he was supposed to be that way, but I don't think it ever really translated on screen. I think they made a movie where Jeremy Renner maybe replaced him, and I don't think it was very well received because
I
people
don't
want
think
to
it
see
went
more
well.
Matt Damon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, well,
So
first off, I was not born when the first two Born books were written. Just gonna throw that out there.
when did they come out? Did I have it
So
right?
it
The
said
70s?
Born Identity came out in 1980. Born
Okay, 80.
Supremacy, yeah, Born Supremacy came out in 1986, and Born Ultimatum came out in 1990. So that's the only one I was alive for. Um,
Wow.
but yeah,
Wow.
but you were right, Robert Ludlum. And
Okay,
then
yeah.
there was a continuation of the novels that was written by Eric Van Lustbader. I think I'm saying that right.
Okay.
So
Interesting. Hmm. Interesting. So, um, so yeah, those are all great examples of the protagonist that's not necessarily um relatable to us, but
Shannon, I didn't know you were here. Yeah, I know you weren't. They're talk about when they graduated high school. Bernadette, I was not alive in 1981, so I apologize. But
man, man, that makes me feel so old. I was 9 years old when the first Born came out. Yeah. So the next that I have on my list, because I'm getting away from this conversation. Relatable versus aspirational, and this is kind of what we were talking about uh, with Jason Bourne or Jack Reacher. Um, Relatable versus aspirational, is the character a mirror that we see ourselves in, or are they a hero that we aspire to be? Do we want a protagonist who's like us, the everyman, like Bilbo, Arthur Dent, Katniss before the arena, or one we wish we were, the exceptional Sherlock, James Bond, Wonder Woman? The sweet spot a lot of great characters hit is ordinary person with extraordinary circumstances. Relatable entry point, aspirational payoff. General
I
angle
can't.
is, has the audience appetite shifted toward flawed and real and away from the polished hero? I would love to hear you guys um opinions on that, because anyway, what were you going to say? And I'll continue.
Because I think it goes right just immediately with what you're saying, with like that relationship element, with that aspirational, the immediate one that comes to mind, and it's
Yeah.
probably one of the most famous, is Elizabeth Bennet. You're so attached to her. You're so relatable. You have like this whole thing where your upbringing is less than optimal. You're not like a total member of society. But then the aspirational part is that you run away with your own Mr. Darcy. So
Right.
that one is the first. mine, but I'd love to hear what everybody else's thoughts were. So,
Um, and to tag on your question there, has have audiences kind of become more cynical? And maybe, and correct me if I'm looking at that wrong. Uh, but we tend to like flawed and real. Um, and I'll give an example of this. The superhero films. Marvel made a huge splash with the MCU, and we began with kind of bright, shiny comic book movies. Think Iron Man, the first Thor, Captain America, um, and then people's appetites started becoming more jaded, maybe
mhm,
is a way to look at it. And we started getting darker and darker representations. And DC Comics put out, this whole line of films with the Man of Steel and the Wonder Woman and the Batman movies where they're darker and more gritty. And some people love those, but I feel like there had come a point where there was a pushback to that, and they remade Superman last year, and it's bright and colorful, and Superman is back to being, truth, justice in the American way, and and less uh cynical is just the word that just keeps coming back to me. Just like we want to go back and have one of those feel good movies. Are Do people still have an appetite for feel good protagonist, or does everything have to be darker and gritty, and are all of our protagonists have to be flawed? I personally am not a big fan of overly flawed characters. I
I'm
want
not
I want a
either.
character to be flawed because I'm flawed, and I want to be able to relate to them, but I don't want a protagonist that's just a horrible person and treats everyone around them horribly, and they just happen to stumble in to doing the right thing. We all stumble into doing the right thing occasionally, but I think most of us wake up every day wanting to be the best version of ourselves.
Mhm,
I don't know anyone that wakes up and just like, I think I'll be a mustache twirling supervillain today. We all have moments where we are the supervillain because we're human, but it's not what we aspire to. Um,
right.
I just I like to hold out hope that people want to be the best version of themselves, and I like stories that maybe start with the problem and resolve to something better. Maybe I'm just being, you know, uh, naive, but I'd love to hear what you guys think. Uh,
So
let's see.
Bernadette saying, I want real too, not perfect, not horrible, but also not happy cupcakes and butterflies.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Elsie saying, if I read Dark Anything, I don't expect to like anybody, which
Mm.
that's fine. All my characters are Kara saying all my characters are flawed. When I was a kid, I had a little book called Peter Perfect. At the end of the book, I was relieved that Peter wasn't real. I try not to
uh,
write Peter Perfect characters. So
Fair enough.
yeah, so I think it sounds like a lot more people are leaning towards the real characters. Um,
Yeah. Rob said the DCEU or Snyderverse died when DC was sold to their current owners and James Gunn was put in charge. He's rebooting the DCU with a lighter tone and vision. Yeah. But what's your opinion on that, Rob? Do you think the lighter tone and vision is the right move? Do you think the darker Snyderverse versions? Like I'm genuinely interested in what you guys think about these portrayal of characters that sometimes can be kind of over the top cookie cutters, but do we go too far with trying to make them, more relatable? And Rob says he loves the new DCU. Yeah, I do too. I love the latest Superman that came out, and that had crypto, the super dog and all that. I just it 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 sent me back to the early 80s when I'm, reading comic books as a kid, and it put me in touch with something that I loved and didn't know that I was missing. Um, I like the Snyderverse, but I like the James Gunn's not following the darker version. Yeah, I agree. Um, Elsie says DC has to be gritty and dark. Marvel's light and fluffy contrast to the dark DC heroes. Hmm. I like the pushback. NJ says I prefer heroes that are treated as people instead of gods with no flaws or struggle. On the other hand, there's strength that heroes portray when they seem unbreakable. I still want smackdowns. Yes. And I think that's where the tension is that we all want. We want people that are more capable than us, but that still have struggles.
Mhm.
That, and I think the biggest complaint with Superman for so long was that he was the big blue Boy Scout. He would just show up and just solve all the problems, and uh, there's never any tension with that character. And with a character that powerful, it's a challenge to have that tension. And but he's also been around for 80 years, so
Yeah.
something is gone right for him. But anyway, relatable versus aspiration. What are your preferences, Brooke?
Mine are very much relatable. But again, um, so one of my favorite books I've read, and I know it's super basic of me, but it's Gale by Kristen Hanna, my younger sister. So it was relatable from the perspective of being a sister. It was aspirational in the fact that I would hope to have handled World War II the same way that both of them did. They handled it very different ways, but they're both components of either character that would have been wonderful.
Yeah,
So, I'm definitely more on the relatable, but you can't in real life, I don't like people who don't have aspirations or don't want to become better. So, if there's a
yeah,
character like that in a book that I'm reading, I really struggle. So, but what about you, Hank? How do you feel?
yeah, yeah. I want a character that I can relate to, uh, in their everyday struggles. But I also want a story that shows me that a better version of myself can exist. And I know
Exactly.
that's being extremely reductionist, and I fully understand. I'm just talking about, you know, if we had our druthers, but every book is not that way. And I've read some books that I loved that didn't turn out that way. But the author did a great job of subverting my expectations, shall we say. But I want a story that shows me that things can be better.
Mhm.
And that's why I'm not a big fan of horror. I don't and but even some horror stories are really about overcoming adversity just to an extreme level. Um, but some are not, some are just, slaughter fest. And I'm just not
Yeah.
into that. That's not, it's not my jam.
Yeah.
But some people love that. But for me, if I'm going to spend 10, 12, 15 hours with a set of characters in a book, I want it to be an adventure that I go on with them, and I want to leave in a better place than I started.
Yeah.
And yeah, that I know that sounds pie in the sky when I say it that way, but why else do we read? If we and I even like darker thrillers and stuff. I don't like all the blood and gore, but I don't mind characters being put into peril and bad things happening. And I think there's a place for that, where we see horrible things that happen in the world from the comfort of our reading chair, where we know the world is safe and warm, but we get to kind of see the way things are. I think that's a valid thing and probably things that we need. Um, but for me, it has to have a better resolution in the end. Like, you can't just murder the families and then credits. I need something. I
Well, I
need
mean,
there to
you
be some
can. It's
resolution.
just yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just not my preference. It's not my preference.
Oh, yeah, same. Yeah, when Shannon said that, like, a lot of times she's thinking about how to murder her, main characters before she really even gets into them. It was like, "Oh, okay, so I know to keep you at
Oh,
arm's length."
yes.
If she's still on
Yeah.
here, she's probably, like, right
Yeah.
now. But
Just
no, I'm just kidding. But yeah.
yeah, mental note, no disagreements with them. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, no, she's awesome. But yeah, so it's just I think a lot of it also has to deal with it's like there's so many like ups and downs and burdens that you have to deal with in everyday life. Why sign up
Yeah.
to for more depression, more
Right.
anxiety, and more
Right.
chaos? So
Yes. Unless I know
Shannon.
there's, I feel like I'm being taken out of context. Well, that's our job. Our job is to take a random comment from you and paste it on a billboard. And yeah, thanks for being a good sport, Shannon. Yes.
Yeah,
So
she's
let's talk a
totally
little bit about that. The mechanics of empathy. Why do we root for our protagonist at all? Um, Concrete tools writers actually use the save the cat moment, showing them treated unfairly, giving them a goal we understand, making them good at something, putting them in danger early. Empathy versus sympathy. We don't have to feel sorry for them. We have to understand them from the inside. Uh, which bonds an audience faster, competence or vulnerability? And they both work in different scenarios, but what makes you bond with a character faster? Um, Seeing their vulnerability, understanding their pain and struggle, or seeing them be able to step over that.
I would say um but I think for me, I would have to say it has to be a combination of the both. Because if you are
Mhm.
if there was like a protagonist that is always the victim and their quote unquote vulnerability is all the wrongs that society or the people around them are doing,
Mhm.
yeah, that's gonna be an immediate no-go for me, dog. But
Yeah.
so yeah, that's kind of my initial reaction to that question.
Yeah. Yeah. I I definitely want to feel what you as the character are feeling, and I wanna be with you in that bad day. I wanna understand why things are horrible for you. I don't wanna watch you wallow in it for 400 pages.
Right.
Uh, I wanna understand you. I wanna feel it. I wanna be there in the depths of despair. I don't wanna stay there with you. I wanna be there with you as you're figuring it out, as I hate to use the term pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, because I know that's you've been wildly overused, um, but kinda, like, I wanna see you be better
Like the
and
grit,
figure
like
it out.
you want to see the grit, you want to see the yeah, because like if you're just gonna wallow in it, I can just go deal with my kids for a couple hours, like if I
Right.
wanted to. um
Yeah.
Not that I don't deal with my kids, like they're great, but
Look, I
um
raised 5 kids. I can tell you all about the depths of despair. I've
yes,
been there.
while my son is belly laughing on the other side of my door right now, so he's so wallowing right now. No, I'm kidding, but I just yeah, I think it's just it's one of those things where I don't want you to wallow. Like I want you to I want to see you overcome. Like you have to overcome. Otherwise it's just too much of like the everybody that you see every day. So,
Yes. Yes. Um, yeah, and I think the sympathy versus empathy is important because sympathy, and I think it's fine to go from sympathy to empathy, like to feel the despair with them in the beginning. I think that's perfectly valid, but I want to see you shift that and give me something to root for. Give me something to to be pulling for you as I turn the pages. Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. Um here's a good one. Contradiction and complexity. Real memorable people contain contradictions. The tough guy who's scared, the cynic who secretly hopes, the saint with a mean streak, the gap between how a character sees themselves and how they actually are is a gold mine. Look at Michael Scott, Don Draper, Elizabeth Bennett. Elizabeth Bennett's I Never Misjudge People.
Mhm.
Like, you know, we want to see people that like we've alluded to so many times, that say one thing and do another, or or find themselves in a situation and find a way out. Sometimes those are contradictions. Sometimes we feel one way but we know we have to do another, or we say we're one thing, and we say we're a faithful friend, and then when our backs against the wall, we stab a friend in the back, and then
Mhm.
that sets up a whole story. We want this character to be better, and then they're not, and then how do we get back to better? Like
Mhm.
that's a whole story arc right there.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. What do you guys think about the contradiction in character traits, and the complexities and the flaws, and kind of wearing them on our sleeve? And I feel like the chat is just
It's
going
all over
nuts
the
over here.
place. Yes.
And
They're talking I found out that there are a bunch of Trekkies, so
oh, well, I love that Star Trek movie with Chewbacca. That was my favorite. Just trying
you're
to
gonna
throw a little
get
red, just trying to throw a little red meat to the chat there.
oh, they're gonna rip
Um,
that one apart.
what about the protagonist and the antagonist? To have a good protagonist, do you need a well-formed antagonist? NJ, I will fight you, Nick. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It was just, like I said, throwing red meat to the chat. Um, oh, I think I've forgotten to pay attention to Hank and Brooke. Uh-oh. Um, what about that duality of protagonist with antagonist? Because, for instance, my two books that I'm working on now, the epic fantasy, definitely has a well-formed antagonist that is literally at war with the protagonist. Like, it is light and dark, white and black. It's as it's as plainly put, a story as epic fantasy a lot of times is. But my literary book, while there is an antagonist, there's an antagonist to one of the characters who's not our main protagonist. Um, but he becomes an antagonistic character that brings about some of the change, but he's not a direct antagonist to my protagonist.
Mm,
Feel like I'm talking around in circles, because it's his friend's father who is abusive, but it really has no bearing on our protagonist.
right.
Although with him looking back on it, he starts to see he's really feeling that empathy of what his friend went through. Um, and so that has a almost uh, a secondary effect on him. But the story's not driven by the antagonist.
Mhm.
So I think genre plays a lot into that, and our expectations of protagonist and antagonist. What about your story that you're writing? Is there a defined antagonist, and is it an external force that is applying itself against your story?
Yeah, so there's actually two antagonists in the book as it stands right now. I know that
Okay.
there will be more as we develop, but the first one is really based upon a relationship that I had had. That's the my daughter's father in the book. But the other one in the book starts out as a protagonist, and then you really start to see his true colors to realize that he's been an antagonist the whole time. So
Mm,
there's definitely like the two components to it. And while it's an interesting because while the biggest antagonist to the character portrays himself as the protagonist while trying to make the mom
yeah.
the antagonist. I know this is like talking in circles. Um, it's like more is revealed as she like goes down her path and starts to see the full story and the truth for herself all at once. So,
Gotcha. Um, just the note that I wrote here under the protagonist is defined by the antagonist. The villain is the protagonist's shadow, The best ones want the same thing by different means or at what the hero could become. Think Batman versus Joker, Clarice versus Lecter, Harry versus Voldemort. The stronger the opposition, the more the protagonist is revealed. Pressure is what shows us who they are. Your
Mhm.
protagonist is only as compelling as the force pushing against them. And yes, that's true for some genres. But
Yes.
as I just elucidated and in literary fiction, that's not always the case. But anytime we're talking about genre fiction, commercial fiction, um, it almost always is protagonist versus antagonist. Uh,
Mhm.
That's just a good rule of thumb. Um, and here's another one: how your protagonist treats other people. Character is revealed in relationships. How the lead treats a waiter, a sidekick, a rival, someone who could do nothing for them.
Mhm.
They pet the dog, kick the dog shorthand, and why small gestures tell us more than big speeches. Um,
Mhm.
so here's the debate: is the protagonist's relationship to other characters more revealing than their relationship to the plot? And oftentimes that's going to be a yes. How they treat the other people in the book sometimes is more important than if they catch the bank robber or, you know, if they escape uh, the rock slide or, whatever your plot point is. A lot of times their relationship to the other characters is what we remember. But case in point, um, Outlander recently finished on TV, and my wife and I have watched Outlander on TV since it debuted. Uh,
Mhm.
and and sometimes there was a year or 2 years between seasons, especially during COVID where things were shut down. There was like 2.5 years, and we thought we were like super up on the story, and as soon as it finished and we saw the series finale, we went back and started watching again from season 1. Okay, wild things happened that we did not remember. And I had a theory that in one of my workshops that I did that people do not remember your plot, they remember your characters.
Mhm.
And I made that point before we did this Outlander experiment, and it just I kept telling Dawn as we were watching it, we're like, this just proves like we did not remember this at all, but we remembered how Jamie and Claire grew through this and how their
Mhm.
characters changed. That's what you remember. You don't necessarily remember, this battle or that or whatever. You remember what happens to your character as a result of that hardship or that character interaction. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, how your character relates with other characters, I think is one of the most important.
Yeah, NJ just posted, and I'll show this up here. But like, I always tell my students that people may not remember the words you use, but they'll remember how you made it, how you make them feel. And I think
Absolutely.
that's very true. And an
Yes.
interesting perspective on this, because we're talking about like the characters and stuff like that. But I also think that character interactions, especially when you don't have like an all-knowing, um, oh my gosh, my words, they're not working today. Uh the narrator, like you don't have a narrator, it also allows you to discover the true depth of a situation without necessarily having to outline it in the plot, for example. So like if a character would be, they don't know the true depth of manipulation from a parent, a lot of that is brought to life through interaction, how they engage with the other people. Meanwhile, the reader might know what's actually going on. So I think that those relational pieces can even be a major driver in a story, even if it's not necessarily just how they're treating a tertiary character, so to
Right.
say.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and like Elsie said, I agree with that, Hank. That's why you can get something new from the plot every time you reread a book. Yeah,
Hmm.
because the thing that changes you as the reader is how that at how those relationships happen. We're just humans. We're relational people, and those are the things we take away from stories. Um, we're down to the last couple minutes, so this is my final one I want to end on. When protagonists lose or the tragic lead. Not every great protagonist gets what they want. Tragic arcs, Macbeth, Michael Corleone, Jay Gatsby, Thelma and Louise, um, is a downfall arc harder to pull off than a triumph? What makes a doomed protagonist satisfying instead of just depressing? And then the audience contract will follow a character anywhere if the emotional truth holds. Can you think of a story that you would want to tell, Brooke, or a story that you've read that you loved or at least found impactful, where the protagonist didn't win in the end?
So the one that comes to mind, and actually there was some buzz about it recently, is Steel Magnolias. It's more, like, yeah,
Yeah,
like
that's
that's the
tearjerker.
first. That is like it. That movie and that book has a purpose. It was a book, wasn't it? I think it was.
It was a book. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure it was. Pretty sure it was. Yeah.
yeah, because it was Shelby's brother wrote it.
Okay.
Because Jack actually ended up getting married 3 months after Shelby died, but that's a whole other thing. So he wanted, yeah, so her brother wanted to write it so that her legacy wouldn't be lost with the baby.
Oh, man.
Yeah, but that one, I mean, that's like, that one just, or like that one hits home, and that's one that I absolutely
Yeah.
love. I love that story. Now,
Yeah.
some of the other ones, like with Bonnie and Clyde, and I mean, they were real people, but I struggle with some of the other ones. That's just like the one that kind of comes to mind, that it's just really hits home, but I enjoyed that story.
In the chat, Falling Down. Did you ever see that movie, Falling Down, where
Mm-mm.
Michael Douglas, I think it was Michael Douglas. Somebody correct me if I got that wrong. He's a man who's just kind of stuck in the grind of life, going to work, and he's just in the grind. And one
Mhm.
day he's on his way to work, and like everything goes wrong, and he just snaps, and he has a gun in the car, and he goes and pulls it out, and he starts, people that cut him off in traffic. He just, like, threatens them, and scares them to death, and beats people up. And he goes into a fast food place. They get the order wrong, and he just goes off, and he just does all the things that we all wish we could do on some
Yes.
days, if we could
Mhm.
just channel the worst parts of ourselves. And he just goes with it. He just goes all in. And it's been so long since I've seen it, but I'm trying to remember the end. I'm pretty sure he gets arrested by the cops, and it's just a bad day. And I don't think there's really any resolution to it that I can remember. But it's just like a cautionary tale, and it's one of those things that's like, I'm gonna live this through him so that I don't have to live it. It's one of those kind of things. And it's absolutely a tragedy. It's just horrific, but you kind of root for him, even though he's doing things that we would never ever do. But
Mhm.
he's doing them because we secretly kind of want to, you
Yeah.
know. But yeah. So yeah,
Bernadette, I don't know what FFXIV is.
hmm, there's several main Final Fantasy 14.
Maybe.
That's a wild guess. That's a wild guess if it is. Um, yeah, I'm not a gamer, so okay, perfect. What? Look at me.
You figured it out.
I figured it out. I don't know how I did, but look at me. Um, so yeah, just a little chat about Protagonist. Next
Mhm.
Monday, I'm going to do a workshop about all of these topics that we went over, and how you can implement them into your storytelling, and you can create characters that your readers will go the distance with, because that's what it's all about. We want characters that people say, I want to get a tattoo of this character on my body. That's what
Mhm.
we're going to talk about next Monday. So, Brooke, thank you for joining me today. This was a lot of fun.
No problem. I hope I was
Yeah,
helpful. So,
it's absolutely amazing. Everybody give Brooke a hand, and we'll see you. I'll see you at Writing Sprints tomorrow. And I think I'm hosting coffee hour for Abby this week,
mhm.
because Brooke, you hosted last week. And then
Yep.
Writing Sprints with Doug on Thursday. So we'll see you guys around. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.